Hi, this is TheHande, and welcome back to the Leaders of Finland series. It's been a while. And today, this Leaders of Finland video is basically going to be kind of an extended video podcast. I'm gonna have a little slideshow running in the background because there was a lot of topics that I wanted to cover, but yeah, the previous video came out last year, just as the Orpo government had come into power. And I have been meaning to make videos regarding a lot of different important political events in Finland. You know, we had a presidential election this year as well. And I feel really bad. I feel really bad that I didn't have the energy to do those videos, but there's also another reason that's kind of been bugging me, and so that's what this Leaders of Finland podcast is going to be about. There's going to be three broad topics. First of all, it's just going to be a little update on what the Orpo government, our most recent government, is up to these days. I'm also going to be talking about the Finnish presidential elections, ins and outs of it, and then I'm going to be talking, the third topic is going to be the future of the Leaders of Finland series, because I do want to bring this series back, and I would like to be able to do videos again with some regularity. I'll explain why this past year I just haven't had either the energy or the motivation to do these types of videos, and I will also talk quite openly about what is the next planned video in this series, the full planned video. But like I said, because there's so many topics for me to talk about today, I decided that I was going to make things easy. I don't want to do too much fancy editing and stuff. So that's why I'm going to be doing, because I've been doing a lot of these video podcasts this year anyway, I decided I'm going to make things a little bit easier on myself and just talk very free form in front of you. But yes, let's get on with the first topic. Alright, so let's start with talking about the Petteri Orpo government. So if you didn't see my, so I had a couple of videos about this last year. I made a video just before the parliamentary elections happened, and then I made a video talking about the Orpo government after the government formation had been, fully realized, and I even mentioned some of the important ministry positions and some of the most important ministry positions that the Orpo government would be taking. But just as a reminder for if somebody is out of the loop on this, so the Petteri Orpo government is led by the National Coalition Party, and it's generally kind of thought of as a very powerfully right-leaning government right now. The partner parties include the Finns Party, which is one of Finland's kind of populist right-wing party. Then we have the Swedish People's Party, which is interesting because the last time that the Finns Party was in the government during the Juha Sipilä period, the Swedish People's Party actually refused to join, but they've obviously had a bit of a change of heart regarding the Finns Party. And then the Christian Democrats, who have been in the government, I think, maybe back in the 90s, was it? They were definitely one of those, one of the 90s or 2000s governments, one of the we have kind of a mishmash. They sometimes call these ironically the rainbow governments, where they have a whole bunch of parties. Anyway, so I mentioned that the Orpo government's primary goal, ever since it came into power as a right-leaning party, has been to cut government costs a lot. So this is something going back to, and I've been kind of going over some of my old videos just to remind myself of some of this. So the Sanna Marin government, which preceded it, was very strongly left-leaning. So there was the SDP, the Left Alliance, the Green Party, and then the Center Party in the government. And weirdly, the Center Party decided not to come into this government, despite the fact that I absolutely assumed that they would. But yeah, so what has basically been kind of the mantra of this current government is that they've been trying to find ways to cut costs to various social services and welfare. And it's kind of an unusual situation because we are constantly being kind of bombarded in Finland in the news how our healthcare system is so ineffective and how things have not really worked out. But the Orpo government really, really did have a rocky start, and this is a controversy that took place at the very offset of the government, which, while I understand why this controversy happened, it became one of those things that I think even I myself got a little annoyed with. So I mentioned in that previous video, and this is something that, I've actually been thinking about, like, making a video where I would actually discuss some of my political opinions and positions, because people might know that, sorry, this is going a little bit behind the scenes here, I'm a little side tangent here, but obviously my inspiration for starting this series was J.J. McCullough, who does videos about Canadian culture and politics and things. And he has a great video where he also discusses his own political views, which I thought is really good. And I've been thinking about trying to do that same kind of video myself. I've just kind of always shied away from it because I've thought, I don't know if anybody's going to find this interesting. I think people should probably see that when I try to cover these topics, I am kind of trying to be as neutral as possible, that even though I don't like certain parties very much, I still always try to look for positives and, try to note the, the good as well as the bad. So I try not to lay it too heavy, even with people that I dislike, even political parties that I dislike, like the Finns party, like the Center party. And so, the thing is, like, so what I'm getting at here is that people might have gathered, if you read between the lines, that I'm not very happy with this government formation, is that I'm a very big lefty myself. I would consider myself very left-leaning. But I am also, and I need to stress this, I am also a strong believer in parliamentarism. And that necessarily requires that your party's not always going to be in power. There's, the very nature of democracy is that the power has to shift once in a while, or then it's not really a true democracy. Somebody else has to take charge once again. And while I wasn't the biggest fan of the Sanna Marin government, I did still think, and I stand by what I said in the Sanna Marin video, I thought she was a perfectly suitable prime minister. Now, the funny part is that I think Sanna Marin has kind of nuked her public image a little bit, because after the elections, and this is kind of tangential, because, the SDP ended up in the opposition. But Sanna Marin got picked up for a completely different political job, at some institute, I forget what it's called, and decided not to continue being a member of parliament. So she went off to do something else completely different. And that was something that people did not expect. And I think the SDP was in a bit of like thinking like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? We kind of just lost our most popular politician. Now, funny enough, on the week that I'm recording this, it's actually being mentioned on the news that the SDP has actually just recently climbed to the top of the approval ratings as the most popular party. So maybe Sanna Marin leaving the party has not affected them that negatively. Sorry, we're getting on a complete side tangent. We're supposed to talk about the Orpo government. Okay, so one of the things that unfortunately cropped up was when the Orpo government was assigning the ministers' seats to all of the in their government, the Minister of Employment caused huge problems and a huge controversy. And that person, his picture is going to come up in a minute, is called Wilhelm Junnila. And Wilhelm Junnila, it was found out, there he is, was found to have connections to some questionable right-wing organizations, some pretty, far-right stuff. Now, the NCP, although they're a right-wing party, they're not a hard right-wing party. On the contrary, they're very liberal. And obviously, this was a big no-no for the NCP. So they had Junnila in, they questioned him, and initially they announced that Junnila, had admitted that, okay, I had written some questionable posts in social media. That's what this whole hubbub was about. And initially, the Prime Minister Orpo and some of his cohorts were basically thinking, okay, the guy fucked up, but, he said he's sorry, business as usual. But no, then it wound up that he had, attended some, extreme right-wing rallies or something. And at that point, it was announced that, that Junnila had to go. And he was replaced by, I would say, ironically, another rather controversial politician, a former NCP politician. His picture is on the rotation too. Former NCP member who left NCP after his scandal and joined the Finns party. His name is Ville Rydman, and ironically, his controversy did not have anything to do with racism. It had something to do with him being a bit of a creep show, apparently, but towards women. But apparently, that turned out to be fake news or whatever. Anywho, but he did lose the confidence of the party, so that's why he moved over to the Finns party. Anyway. The Junnila, however, immediately was, the first big egg on their face that the Orpo government had, and it led to this really annoying thing last summer, or not, summer last year, I should say, where the opposition had dug up this dirt that was really, really bad, and basically, they managed to nuke a minister nomination before that minister had even managed to start their job. And then things just amped up from there. They started finding other questionable social media posts from other members of the Orpo government. And then basically, it was starting to get to the point it's like the opposition had gotten this early victory over the government. And now they were looking for their next hit, like the dopamine hit that they got from managing to nuke this one guy. And don't get me wrong, I think, firing Junnila was absolutely the right call. But then this relentless bombardment of the other ministers about stuff that they had written in the social media in years past and things like that, even I was starting to get a little bit annoyed with this, because yeah, we know what kind of people these people are. It's not coming as a shock to anybody, but they had not really even started doing their job in the government. But anyway, the hubbub and the controversy over this was so bad that eventually Petteri Orpo decided that they had to take some decisive action. And the decisive action was that they made this declaration. I forget what it's called. I'll maybe put up a picture here, a text here if I remember to look it up. But the government basically made this anti-racism declaration, which meant that every member of the Orpo government, whatever function they serve, either as a minister or an aide or whatever, would basically denounce any kind of racist language, racist ideologies, or any kind of public statements that could be misconstrued as racist. And this was meant as now we're showing that we're doing something about this, and this declaration did not get like a lot of hoorays from anybody, not on either side, because you can probably guess that this was a pretty embarrassing episode, because no other Finnish government has ever had to say, hey, racism is bad, man, because it's kind of obvious. But I do understand that Orpo was in a bit of a catch-22 situation here. It was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. They had to do something to get the controversy off their backs, and this was like the best solution that they could come up with. It didn't, it wasn't like a smooth, it wasn't like a great resolution, but all the government parties agreed to it. They decided, okay, we're going to do this so that, the opposition will stop hounding us on this one issue. And I think, that it was like, that was my takeaway from all of this as well. Like I said, getting rid of Junnila, okay, that was absolutely the right call. But I started to get really annoyed, I was thinking at least let these guys do their job and then criticize them for doing their job badly. It was like the opposition was trying to basically block Orpo and his government from even doing their job, and I think that was started to feel a little skeevy to me. I'm sorry. Yes, I don't like these parties, I don't like the politicians, I don't like what they stand for, but come on, just let them do their job first and wait for them to fuck up that way. You know, find a legitimate thing, legitimate current thing to criticize them about, rather than just digging up old dirt from years past, because I was starting to get sick and tired of it. I think everybody was starting to get sick and tired of it at the end. And luckily, you know, that went away. Okay, so what exactly has the Orpo government been working on since then? Well, so let's start with some of the better goals that the Orpo government has had. First of all, they are pushing to try to fight gang activity in Finland, and this is a source of concern, because we know that Sweden, as it seems like in the last couple of videos I've been constantly, you know, comparing us to Sweden, but they are right next door. Sweden has a huge problem with gang activity right now, and when I say they have a huge problem with gang activity, I mean like people lighting up cars in police station parking lots and street gangs using hand grenades to kill each other. So that's the kind of level of threat. Finland is not there right now, but we're getting really concerned that this kind of like criminal culture, unfortunately, is like seeping into over here. So the Orpo government is trying to come up with solutions to somehow combat or alleviate or do something about that. They are also trying to improve and maybe incentivize, well, first of all, improve the lives of families with children, and maybe incentivize people to even have children, you know, through various social reforms. And they are concerned, and this is, you know, this hits home for me, and I've been hearing a lot about this at my job, for instance, like, they are concerned with conditions at Finnish schools. They are concerned with disruptions to everyday school life, especially from smart devices and phones in particular. And, you know, these are, you know, all, I would say, like, you know, goals worth aiming for. I do think that the Finnish government could do something to help Finnish law enforcement. The issue really is, like, I think it's kind of running into the same problem as with the healthcare system. Like, you know, maybe we need more cops, but where are we going to get those? They're not just going to just crop, you know, they're just going to come out of the ground or anything. And I think, you know, trying to improve, you know, supporting families is a, you know, it's an admirable goal. But, you know, they're doing some other stuff that is kind of, in my view, self-defeating the purpose a little bit. The school stuff, that seems to be like the one thing that everybody universally seems to agree that, yeah, the government, that's something that's worth shooting for. They should really be aiming at that. And I do notice that they have also approved a lot of money into road reconstruction projects. So, you know, keeping Finnish roads alive. I think that's the Finns party is doing, because the Finns party are kind of like the car owners party right now. They are very, you know, they're very heavily invested in that. But what have they been doing? Some slightly negative things. Well, there's been controversy about all of their different kinds of social cuts. They're trying to push students into taking loans rather than getting the free student money that they used to have. And yeah, that's something that in Finland, like, students are basically given a certain degree of free money, a certain amount of free money every year. It's not a lot. It's not enough to live off of, but it is something that has been a part of Finnish, with the Finnish social structure for a long while. And I get it. That seems like people just giving money away seems like, you know, I get like why a right-wing government might think, okay, that's like a hole we need to plug. But like forcing kids who are still trying to get an education, or still trying to work towards, you know, a possible profession that they may not end up working at anyway. Like, this is one of the things. This is not something that people don't. I think this is a reality check that for young people, is that sometimes just because you do get into the university you want, and just because you get into the schools you want, and just because you think you're going to work at this field, you might end up discovering, oh wait, I hate this. This is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. You know what you have to do at that point then? You have to go back to school, and then you have to start, you know, then you have to start working towards another profession, possibly. And that sucks, but it is the reality. That is the reality of the situation. Saddling people with debt, if they kind of make the wrong choice early on, and it happens to a lot more people than you think. A lot of people think that they want to go to med school, and then they discover that they can't stand the sight of blood. A lot of people want to study law, and then they realize, oh wait, I hate arguing in court. This sucks. I want to do something else that's less stressful. There are people find out all the time that they're not maybe suited for the jobs that they thought that they wanted. So that's the thing that hits, that in my opinion hits. This is not something that's not something that hits me personally, because I've never really struggled with money issues. But I can totally see why for a large group of people this might be an issue. Then there's the whole tightening of immigration policy. Now, luckily, it does not look like what is, I was talking about earlier, that the Finns party was looking to lowering immigration quotas in Finland. And immigration, I will admit, is right now, it's a very difficult topic to talk about right now, because what has been happening on the Finnish-Russian border, even though the Finnish-Russian border is sort of half closed, people can cross, but it has to be for a really good reason. And what Russia started doing was pushing immigrants to the Finnish border in order to disrupt Finland. So I understand that the Finnish government, so I sympathize with the Finnish government in the situation that Russia is intentionally sending immigrants with no official documentation of any kind in order to, confuse us and cause us problems. And there's a lot of debate over what should be done with these people, because their rights need to be looked after. But what are we going to do if they don't have any documentation? We don't know where they're actually from, and that's another hot topic. And that's whatever solution the government comes up with, people are going to have problems with it. So that's not what I wanted to talk about. What I am concerned about is that the Finnish government has tightened the standards for immigrants already in the country, and whether or not they're allowed to stay based on their employment. So basically, the thing is, you can't be unemployed for longer than 3 months now if you're in Finland, and basically they started to make things a lot more challenging for people who want to stay in Finland. And I feel this is again, I don't know why this is the solution. I mean, I guess I know why, but we need more immigrant workers. That's just the reality, and this is the reason why I have such a I seriously can't understand what dream world. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little heated under the collar here. I don't know what the dream world that the Finns party is living in, where we can't bring in more people to work jobs in Finland. We're not allowed to bring them from outside. And don't get me wrong, the Finns party keeps bringing up the whole thing about work-based immigration is fine. Great. Then stop making it hard for everybody. Sorry, I know I'm getting a little heated about this, but yeah, it's seriously because Finland, I've mentioned this, that Finland is a bit of a bureaucratic hellhole. We're very pedantic about, you need to have the right papers, you need to have the right qualifications. You can't be a doctor even if you went to med school in the United States. Okay, maybe you're barely qualified to come and work for us as a doctor. If you went to med school in Nigeria, then nope. No, you're not going to be a doctor. You're going to be a janitor or something like that. It feels like that, and I get it, because in some of those countries, the standards for what is required is different. I get it, but I wish the Finnish. I really wish these were the kinds of things where Finland could, we could be a little bit more flexible. Like if somebody, for instance, is clearly capable of doing a certain job, then please. For the love of God, just let them do the job. We need, that's the thing what we need right now. We need more doctors. We need more nurses. We need, all sorts. And yeah, so the immigrants are having it a bit hard. Now, another thing that's happened now, and again, I understand why this is happening. This is probably the least surprising of all, is that they have increased just recently, a few days ago. Finland increased its VAT, or value added tax. If you don't know what VAT is, I'm not gonna sit here and explain because I'm not an economist. But yeah, prices have gone up. Prices of everything across the board. So this was a general VAT increase, which I don't remember has ever happened. I do remember that they, different governments have raised taxes, for specific products, but this was a general VAT increase. And I do get the feeling there are some low-income people in Finland who are now feeling the pinch of it. But this was the government's solution for, I guess, to get a little bit more money, which is weird. This seems like very not right government, like right-wing governments typically are not this pro-taxation. Like Sanna Marin wasn't even like this, pro-taxation. That's usually a very left thing, but yeah. I feel like I'm drifting off a little bit off topic here, but so let me just close off. So the Orpo government does have some admirable goals, and the thing that I am kind of also a little bit concerned right now is like, are the different parties in the government really on the same page on a lot of things? Because it seems like, after the Junnila thing got, finally dealt with, it does feel constantly like the Finns party is not doing a lot to, endear themselves to the Finnish public. Oh, that's the other thing. Well, okay, I'll close out with this. The Orpo government has also not made it, like I said, they have definitely not endeared themselves to the Finnish public because they've been talking a lot about cuts to public costs. And they posted a lot of like social media posts with like cutting boards and things like that. And people have been starting to like, okay, this is not funny. This is actually kind of terrifying. How do you get away with doing like that? I guess the idea is that they're trying to take a little bit of the edge of these decisions. But yeah, that's the kind of situation we're in. So the long-term things, are these savings effective? Will they actually help Finland in any way, shape, or form? It's too early to tell. This is the thing, I don't like these cuts. I don't like the decisions that's being made. But I don't know if they're good or bad yet. Some of them, on their face, seem a bit questionable. It's going to take a couple of years to see what the impact is. And this is always that's the thing, when people hear these kinds of things, this is why I kind of don't like talking about politics, is because people get very passionate about it in all the wrong ways. And the thing is, we don't really know. We don't really know what's going to be happening in around 3 years. Sanna Marin didn't know COVID was going to happen. She didn't know the Ukraine war was going to happen. Nobody knew. Nobody fucking knew. The world is in fucking chaos constantly, and we're just having to get through it. So but I do hope that as harsh, wherever the savings are, being taken from right now, that the Orpo government doesn't forget the people that they're impacting, and that some alleviation is going to come in some form later down the line. But like I said, that's basically what I'm getting at. I've been talking about this for too long. I think I need to change topics right now. Alright, so let's now move on to the second topic of this video podcast. I feel like I spent a little bit more time on the Orpo government than I actually wanted to. So let's talk about the Finnish presidential election of 2024. So the campaign for the presidential election, so the election had to be held on in 2 rounds. I've made a whole video explaining about the Finnish presidential elections and how it works. And basically, the thing is if a candidate does not gain more than 50% of the popular vote in the first round, then the top 2 candidates move on to the second round. And so the first round was held on the 23rd of January, the second round on the 5th of February, and so the actual election, the story of this presidential election, I think, is probably one of the most fascinating in many, many years, because it started off as possibly being one of the least interesting, least kinetic presidential elections we've ever had. We had a huge surprise at the end. We had the highest voter turnout since the second 2005 presidential election, which was the second election where it was the election where Tarja Halonen was elected for her second term. But it did not start out all that exciting. In fact, it started off quite the opposite. So last year in 2023, when the presidential campaign, it started off, late summer, early autumn. The general vibe, following, the parliamentary elections, which were, quite tense. And even though the parliamentary elections really shouldn't impact the presidential elections, yeah, it absolutely did this time. Especially you can see with the parties that did really badly. We also had some unusual things, like one of the candidates. So the two top candidates from the first round will go to the second round. I think this is a first. This is a first in Finnish presidential history, I think, where during this modern system, an independent candidate made it into the second round. Technically, I guess you could say they weren't really an independent candidate, because they technically did have the backing of one party, but they did not run as that party's official candidate, which is the point. That's what an independent is an independent does not have... and there were a lot of independents in this election. That was surprising. So, because the SDP wound up in the opposition, they were a little slow on the uptake of who to put as their candidate. The Finns party were also not too keen, despite the getting in the government. They were not too keen to put up a candidate. The Center Party put up Olli Rehn, and Olli Rehn is a politician of great repute with a long career that absolutely nobody cares about. And there he is. I'm sure, absolutely, Olli Rehn, if I could muster the energy to look into his resume, I'm sure that it's dynamite. But nobody cares who Olli Rehn is. He's one of these guys who's always going to run for the presidency, and he's never going to get elected because nobody cares about him. So the Left Alliance did decide to put Lee Anderson up as their candidate because Lee Anderson was still pretty popular, even though the Left Alliance had a really bad showing in the parliamentary elections. But yeah, the Finns party were really not sure who they were going to put up. So eventually, Jussi Halla-aho, the former head of the Finns party, the current head, of course, is Riikka Purra, who is also currently in the Orpo government. So Halla-aho eventually announced that he would be available to run for the presidency. And then the SDP did eventually, after quite a while, start to suggest that maybe Jutta Urpilainen, the Europarliamentarian, would possibly step in and as their candidate. Jutta Urpilainen is currently, I think, working in the European Parliament anyway. So, and she was not too keen on it. She waited until the very end of 2023 before, I think it was in November or December, that she finally announced, like, okay, I'm going to run as the candidate. So, and then, of course, we had Pekka Haavisto, who I've actually dedicated an entire video to. Pekka Haavisto also decided that he was going to run, but... and Pekka Haavisto has actually made it to the second round of had gotten to the second round of the Finnish presidential election twice already. No, wait, once, just once. I always keep forgetting that the second Niinistö election didn't even have a second round. But he was the top candidate that time. And Haavisto would go on to be in the second round, but not as a candidate for the Green Party. So Haavisto decided that he was going to run as an independent. The way you run as an independent, by the way, is that you have to form a, I'm going to call it a support committee. I'm sure that's not the correct term, but basically you have to get enough people to sign off as being a viable, supportable candidate. And Haavisto, like if you've seen my video on Haavisto, you know that he has a dynamite resume. He's a very well respected politician. Also, one of Finland's few openly gay politicians, and that's actually something that he's never been shy about whenever he's been running for president or anything. So eventually, Halla-aho was one of the top candidates when he was finally officially, there's Halla-aho, when he finally was announced. And actually, for surprising reasons, because Halla-aho, even though during the Marin government, you know, the Finns party were obviously in the opposition, Halla-aho was actually working for the foreign ministry. He has lots of connections abroad and has a fairly wide understanding of foreign policies, which is something that surprises me for various reasons. But anyway, it did seem like at the offset, the top candidates would be Haavisto, who had made it to the second round previously, Halla-aho, who was, you know, a politician of fame and notoriety, and then there was a third, kind of a surprising top runner, Mika Aaltola. Now, his picture is going to come up in a minute, and I'll point it out. There he is. Now, Mika Aaltola, he's one of these three major research into foreign relations and foreign issues, who started to become very, very famous when the Ukraine war started. So he was like one of the three major experts who constantly were making the rounds on Finnish television, explaining what was going on in Ukraine. And I think it was simply off the back of that Aaltola decided that, you know, because he had started to gain quite a bit of a media presence. I think he came out with a book also just very recently, like last year as well. So he had a lot of momentum. He was very visible. And so I think because of that, he also ran as an independent candidate. And I think he really genuinely believed that he was going to have a great shot at this presidency. And let me just state this, like the Ukraine war was a key theme in these elections, like, and I'll actually reveal eventually like who I voted for based entirely on that, you know, that entire issue. And there was, of course, unfortunately, one tragic thing, and I'll back up in the order just so you can see it. So you saw the graphic here. Yes, Paavo Väyrynen once again ran also as an independent candidate, or tried to. He wasn't actually able to get on the ballot. And this was really, really sad. He was going to run in the district of Helsinki. He's actually from Kemi or Kemimaa, I'm not entirely sure which one. I made a whole video about Väyrynen, how he's a bit of a political meme in Finland. But yeah, this was a sad day when we discovered that no, Paavo Väyrynen would not be running in these elections. He's run like 4 times before, and each time with kind of diminishing returns. So, you know, I didn't actually think Väyrynen would ever actually become president, even if no matter at what point he would run. But it was kind of definitely like, felt like an end of an era almost, like, oh no, poor Paavo, he was not able to get on the ballot. And the district of Helsinki even extended the period for him to get the signatures necessary for his support committee to, you know, put him up for election. I need to quickly look up what is that term, because it keeps bothering me. Okay, it says like Electorate Association, which I guess is, you know, sort of right. So enough people have to like sign off on like, oh yes, we want this guy to run for public office, and if you can get enough signatures, it doesn't matter if you're not the official candidate of the party. And that's the other thing with Haavisto. So Haavisto was not the official candidate for the Green Party, but the Green Party decided to do him a solid and not put up a candidate against him. Smart move anyway. I don't think they would have done very well. The Green Party, you know, did especially poorly in these elections, and I guess it's a good time again to kind of reveal a little bit more about my political leanings. So, you know, like I said, I'm a pretty big lefty, and in the past, I did used to vote Green Party quite consistently. It was the last the parliamentary elections last year that I finally broke that trend, and I decided to vote Left Alliance instead. And the reason is that I am honestly getting a little sick and tired of the Green Party, not because of what they stand for. I still absolutely support them and their cause. I'm just really annoyed with the party and their lack of leadership skills. Like the leadership of the Green Party for the past few years has been a revolving door of people. And there was this, it might have been Suomen Kuvalehti, I don't remember, it was some magazine that wrote a little article about it, how the Green Party doesn't really seem to accept failure very well. Like, that when they do poorly in elections and like it's not our fault, it's like everybody else is fucking up on. And that's also, I think, the reason why nobody wants to be the leader of the Green Party. It seems like they put this unnecessary pressure. Like, I would really hope for a little bit more humility from that particular party. So that's why I chose to vote for Left Alliance. And if there's another election in the immediate future that might come up, I might actually vote for them again. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked there. So anyway, Mika Aaltola was one of the top candidates. Until then, he had a pretty public meltdown. And what was the meltdown about? It wasn't really even about anything in particular. He was just getting criticized. I think some or multiple reporters were talking about like how they thought that Aaltola was coming off a little bit, if not condescending, but like a little higher than thou and overconfident. There's the word that I'm trying to. I'll come up with it. But anyway, Aaltola got really angry about the stuff that was being written about him in the newspapers, and that immediately nuked his chances. Because as a politician, as a political leader, you have to be ready for the mudflinging. It doesn't matter who it's coming from. It doesn't matter if it comes from your, the guys that are competing for the same position that you're trying to get into, or if it comes from the press. You have to take it. The press is always going to find unflattering things to say about you. And I think Aaltola was just not really, because he's a researcher, meaning that he comes from a world where criticism is directed at you because you didn't get your facts straight, or you didn't do your homework well enough. He's not. I don't think Aaltola is used to the public spotlight of people saying that they don't like your face, basically, and that's what I think nuked Aaltola's chances. Like people stopped talking about him as a serious candidate after that little meltdown, and honestly, after that, and with the Urpilainen's announcement laid on, or getting pushed back, I was kind of thinking, these are the least interesting presidential elections because, like I said, it seemed like nobody wanted to run. But then, the NCP announced that Alexander Stubb was going to be their candidate. I'm joking, of course. It's Alexander Stubb. That's how you pronounce it. But after Stubb was announced, he, immediately jumped to the top of the pile. He immediately was everybody's number one favorite to go on. And Stubb even carried himself, I think, with a certain degree of confidence with him. I've mentioned Stubb in one previous video. He was the guy who took over from Jyrki Katainen when he stepped down as prime minister. So he had served as prime minister for a single year, but taking over from another prime minister. But Stubb is a kind of politician who has no scandals, no controversies. He's the safest, most of safe politicians that anybody could do. He's a liberal-minded, but kind of strict as well, especially when it came to Russia. And that's the thing why I kind of, I ended up voting for him. Because don't get me wrong, Haavisto is definitely, I would consider, a good diplomat. He's I think Haavisto would be a great Haavisto is a great peacetime president, absolutely. But the reason I didn't vote for him is when the issues of Russia came up, I was so much more convinced with what Stubb was saying as opposed to what Haavisto was saying. And don't get me wrong, I think Haavisto is kind of the kind of person who thinks of the long game. So maybe he was more on the right on that one, and maybe I was wrong. But that's the thing, like, I would have absolutely had no reservations about voting for Haavisto. In fact, I try to honestly remember like who I voted for in the previous presidential elections. I am completely blanking out. I have to admit, like I keep losing track of little details like that. But anyway, I ended up voting for Stubb in these elections, and it was entirely because of his foreign policy views. Which is also like, which I think are really, when it comes to the president, I think those are the only ones that really even matter. Now, some people obviously were a bit worried about that because Stubb is from the NCP. The NCP is currently the head of government as well. Like, people were thinking, like, is the NCP getting too much power or whatever? But, there was this one thing that says something about Stubb's character, is that when during that second election, that second round of the elections, when Stubb was announced as the winner, the first thing he did was that he left his own campaign party and went over to Haavisto's campaign party and shook hands and hugged him, and that shows what kind of a guy he is. Like, he wanted to really, really make sure that there were no hard feelings between anybody after that election, and I think that was just an incredible gesture. And like I said, the voter turnout for this presidential election at the end of it all was amazing. The first round got 71%, which is huge compared to a lot of elections that we've had recently, and even most of the presidential elections that we had recently. And even in the second round, a very respectable 67%. So it did go down for the second rate. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Unfortunately, as much as I hate saying this in 2024, the fact that Haavisto's like homosexuality did unfortunately become a theme during the campaign. I think there was like one very awkward TV interview with the two of them, where I think even Stubb was kind of like, "Are you seriously asking these kinds of questions of the guy?" As for the other candidates, like once Stubb stepped into the ring, I think it was really just down to that it was either going to be Halla-aho or Haavisto, and in the end, Haavisto just had, just based on previous presidential elections, because Haavisto is personally just very, very popular. It was pretty much a given that he was going to make it into that second round, and I have the final scores up there if you want to check it out as well. So it was. So it was 51% to 48%. Roughly, I've rounded out the decimals a bit, so you can go check out the actual accurate numbers. All right, it's time for the third and final chapter of this video podcast, the Leaders of Finland video podcast. And so this final topic, of course, relates to the future of Leaders of Finland videos that I plan to do. Because like I said, I feel bad about having put the series on hiatus for this long, and finally just kind of getting ramping up all these things into this into this video podcast that I've been talking about. So I started the Leaders of Finland formally in 2020. There were videos that I had made before that I have kind of included into the Leaders of Finland playlists that had to do with our presidents and things, but they were, at that point, I had not really considered that to actually turning this into a long-term series. So what has happened over time with this series, and this is what I wanted to talk about, was that one of the things that I have constantly kind of been struggling with is like, what do I want to do with this series? And because it started off, Leaders of Finland really started off that I wanted to make videos about, like I said, based on what J.J. McCullough had done on his channel about Canadian politics. I kind of wanted to do something similar about Finnish politics, because I'm genuinely very curious about Finnish political history. Now, I'm not a Finnish political history expert, so I was always doing research, finding out about new stuff, and the reason I eventually did the whole crash course into the Finnish parties and things was because I realized the audience needs this information because I'm sure not a lot of foreign people, spend their nights thinking about, Finnish politics, or they necessarily won't know anything about Finnish politics. So at first I thought, well, I'm just going to do a little crash course into the parties, and then I'm going to move it into talking about, all these interesting figures from Finnish history. And at first, it kind of became about like the great failures in Finnish politics a little bit. That was never the stated purpose, but you can probably guess why I gravitated towards that, because it was kind of interesting to talk about. And eventually, as I was making more of those videos, I started working towards from the past into the present, and then eventually I started realizing, well, I'm going to have to start talking about more recent things. Now, that's where I start to get a bit iffy about it, because I'm not a political expert. I'm not a political commentator. I don't feel I'm the kind of guy that you want to come to ask who I should vote for in the next election. I can give you an opinion about something. I can give you, I have my preferences, but I don't know if they'll align with yours. And the other thing is, like I said, one of the things that kind of grosses me out about political stuff in YouTube videos or anything really is that people take it so far. People wear their heart on their sleeves so hard on these topics. Whereas I've mentioned this in another video in passing, but I have mentioned it. I'm a bit cynical when it comes to politicians. I'm a bit cynical. Even the parties that I like, even the politicians that I respect and like, there is always that kind of a gross level of, I got into this job because I kind of want to have power to decide things. Now, don't get me wrong. I am sure that there are politicians who actually do want to do good things, and that they got into politics because they thought that they could make a difference in a positive way. But that's the reason why I would never run into office, because I don't have that instinct where I want to be in control of things. So, and that's the other thing. So it's kind of a gross thing. It's a level of thing about politics that but it's important. Political history is important. I wish people actually knew a bit more about it. So that's one of the reasons. But also, like, I realized, I kind of realized like the trajectory that was coming in, especially when I was doing those videos about the most recent elections and things. Like, I don't want Leaders of Finland to be like a daily political, thing. I don't want it to be about the politics of right now, because the reality is most politics is kind of boring. On a day-to-day basis, politicians don't do exciting new things every day. And that's never been my task. And also, I feel like I've drifted now pretty far afield from the history stuff. Now, there is a reason for that. And people probably, if you don't remember from previous videos, I have hinted and suggested at it. This was not strictly part of the, this was not a part of the Leaders of Finland series, but I made a video about the Finnish flag. How the Finnish flag, it is the Nordic Cross flag right now, but it used to be the Finnish lion flag during the first few months of Finnish independence. Now, the reason for that was because it got changed after the Finnish Civil War, which started, within a month of us becoming our own country. And in early 2023, I was thinking of, I was gearing up to make a whole video about the Finnish Civil War, because it's very fascinating, has a lot of facets to it, and it had a huge impact in Finnish life and culture for the entirety of the 20s and 30s, basically. So I started working on that video. I was really building up to it. And then the Ukraine war happened. And I'm also not the kind of YouTuber who, when something happens in the world, so that's the thing. I don't like being topical. That's another thing that I find really gross, is that when something is like topical and popular right now, that's when you see a bunch of YouTubers suddenly make a bunch of videos about that topic. And me making a video about a war just as another one had just broken out, even though that war technically didn't have anything to do with Russia. I guess, it sort of did. But even though, it felt really icky to me. And that's why I aborted it. I thought like, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna stay off anything related to war, at least for a time, because the Ukraine war was on everybody. Everybody was talking about it, and it's. But you know what? It is an important topic, and that's why I'm saying it. Like, I am going to definitely now start working towards actually making that Finnish Civil War video, because I think it's important. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. There's a lot of important facets to it, and like I said, it's the war itself. That's the thing that is so weird about the Finnish Civil War, because it only took place over like 5 months, and most of the fighting took place like during the final month of the war. So there wasn't actually a lot of fighting that took place. It was just this very, very scary few months when we didn't know what the hell was going to happen to our country. But the aftermath, the impact, the everything that happened after that was so much more traumatic than the actual war itself. There was a long period of really scary things leading up to it. And then there was a very, very dark shadow, a long dark shadow following the Civil War. And that's what I want to talk about. I've mentioned a few of the things in like the presidential videos when I talk about Stolberg, our first president, how he pardoned all the prisoners of war that were left over from the Civil War 2 years after it had happened. There was a lot of really scary right-wing shit that was going on, like the Lapua movement, the Metsälä uprising, and people associated with the losing side, like how they were just so poorly treated in the aftermath of the Civil War as well. It really divided the nation into not just during the conflict, but afterwards. So that's why I want to make a video about it. It's an incredibly fascinating topic to me, and I really, really hope that once I'm done with it, it's gonna be a big video. It's probably gonna be a slightly longer video. I don't think I can get all the information out of it in a condensed manner in the 10 minutes that I'm used to. But I'll try. I'll try. If in any way, shape, or form I'll be able to turn that into like at least a 15-minute video, I'll try. But yeah, so I feel very passionate about that project. I want to do it. And now enough time has passed that I feel like I have to get it, because also I just want to get back to the history stuff. I want to get back to looking at researching Finnish prime ministers and presidents from years past, seeing all their follies, the good stuff that they did, the bad stuff that they did. And the Finnish Civil War is a big part of that puzzle. It also changed Finnish politics. It changed the tone and the tenor and the goals of Finnish politics for the years to come. Because the politicians suddenly realized, oh, we can't allow something like this to happen again. So, and I think that's very, very Finnish. Finns, luckily, learn from their mistakes. Most of the time, at least. So, yeah. But yeah, that has been this video podcast. Hope to see you in that next video. Maybe it'll be the Civil War video. Maybe it'll be some shorter video. We'll see. But whatever it will be, until next time, I'm TheHande Mäkinen, and see you on the next one.